lot of us, potential does not pay attention to your prayers. It actually distracts you.
There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. Times the bravest thing you'll ever do is leave. Times the bravest thing you'll ever
drain me. The truth, when you heal, the people who...
Have you ever noticed that right before you're getting close to healing, life suddenly hits you with everything that you thought that you had already survived? Like the moment that you finally set a boundary, the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries start acting confused. When you finally decide to rest, your responsibilities start feeling like they're double. And when you finally start choosing peace, chaos shows up knocking at your door like you owe it money. I used to think these moments were setbacks, but no. The truth of the matter is that they were actually tests. Your old life will always try to pull you back when your new life is getting ready to begin. And that is exactly where we're going to be going today. This is part two. And the part that no one likes to talk about is the emotional withdrawals of leaving survival mode, the collapse that happens right before your breakthrough, the loneliness that hits when you stop tolerating dysfunction, and the identity crisis that comes when you're no longer the woman that your trauma created. So I need you guys to stay with me. This is the part where most people quit on their healing journey, not because that they're weak, but because this is the first time they're not running on adrenaline. Let's get into this episode. Hey, y'all. Hey, welcome back to Truth, Trust, and Trajectory with yours truly, Shakimbi, where healing meets transformation. So, before we jump into this episode, I just want to make sure that you guys make sure that you subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you do not miss part 3, okay, or any other updates that I have going on my page right now. Also, make sure that you like this video and also leave me a comment or review and let me know that this episode resonated with you in some sort of way. Also, you guys can find me on social media. So it's Shakim, the life coach, on all major platforms, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. If you guys are just looking for a True Trust and Trajectory, we are also up on Facebook with our business page. So make sure you guys get into it. So I just want to jump into the first section, which is the withdrawal phase of healing and why peace feels like pain. And this is speaking from experience because I'm the poster girl of death and rebirth, breakups, makeups, and hermit mode through and through, right? So a lot of people assume that healing feels like relief. For me, at one point, that might have been true, but it's not, it has no longevity, right? Because the truth of the matter is, even after you are no longer engaging in what broke you, right, you still have to create a space of healing. And I think that is really hard for a lot of people because when you're so used to trauma and chaos and uncertainty and the ups and downs and hot and cold of everything, right? The moment that you no longer feel the side effects of these things, that is when you start seeking out what you were already used to. So I'm going to be very brutally honest and real with you guys. Healing literally feels like withdrawal. Okay. There's no getting around that. There's no bypassing or short circuiting any of that. That's just what it is. And I talk about that in one of my other episodes. I might link it down below, right? But how when you are in the process of actively healing, it feels like a internal war zone. It feels like an internal battle that you kind of feel helpless in the process, right? It's like your body gets addicted to substances. Your nervous system also can get addicted to chaos, hypervigilance, emotional emergencies, people who drain you, relationships that trigger you, environments that keep you tense, patterns that feel familiar, but they're also not safe, and you know that they're not safe. So when you start healing, what happens is that your body goes into panic mode because the stimulus it was used to is no longer present. This is not depression, it's not backsliding, it is literally your nervous system recalibrating. So I want to tell you what this looked like for me. There was a moment that I was in the middle of my separation. I was newly independent, trying to be both a mother and a provider, trying to heal, trying to build a business, trying to rebuild my identity outside of my husband, right? And I remembered sitting on the edge of my bed feeling this deep seated emptiness. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks because I couldn't understand where it was coming from. For me, in the moment, I thought that I was at my pivotal point, right? Where everything was just finally coming together, it was coming into fruition. And then I'm like, where are these emotions, these feelings coming from? Because I never truly healed, not really, right? From the loss of my husband. I think that I was just in a very performative state, a very numbed state where we had been together for so long that I started, just kind of like in my mind, I was like, I'm going to move on because he has, so I will too. Right. Only to find out that it's a heavy load. People can't just move on like that, especially when there's a deep emotional baggage following you from whatever it is that you separated, whether it's a relationship, a living circumstance, environment, whatever it is, right? So it's not sadness, you don't feel fear, it's not loneliness, it's literally just a internal feeling of emptiness. Ultimately, it is a void. So healing creates a void because the old version of you is dying and the new you has not fully formed yet. In the other episode that I previously mentioned, I talk about this very thing about how when you are going through a dark night of the soul, what ends up happening is it feels like there is an internal conflict, a battle, if you will, right? The old you versus the you that is actually meant to coexist on this timeline. And this is for all my spiritual girlies. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, then you won't, right? But that old you, the one that accepted breadcrumbs, right? The one that kind of like minimalized or shrunk herself in order to properly fit in the jurisdiction of a person that might not necessarily be choosing you fully, right? And then there's the version of you that is sick and tired of the bullshit. There is the version of you that no longer wants to endure the pain that comes with this situation, whether it is a job, whether it is a relationship, whether it is a marriage, whether it is responsibilities that you have taken on out of people pleasing tendencies. It is bound to happen, right? People talk about transformation, but they don't talk about the death that comes before it. They just don't. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I didn't know who I was without the pain. I didn't know who I was without the chaos, without survival mode. I remember having a conversation with someone that I was, in relationship with for a short period of time. And I remember, he had told me like if we're not together, then you're not going to have any content, right? Because the thing about it is, I feel like he studied me. So he knew exactly where my motivation comes from because I pride myself. I have a lot of eight house placements in my chart. And so what that means is it's ruled by Pluto, Pluto is the planet of transformation, right? And so because it's in the eighth house, what that has to do with cycles, and it is the death and rebirth of a lot of different things. And I have experienced that time and time again in my life, right? So the ideal that someone has clocked my patterns so deeply and so accurately, right? That they're now concerned or confused as to, well, if you leave me, you're not going to have anything to talk about, right? Because you only view me from a pain stricken point and not the transformative that I can come out of that, right? And so that kind of like fuels me a lot more. So for me, that peace, once I started feeling it, it felt like grief. And the stillness, it felt like discomfort. Breathing felt dangerous. Stability felt unfamiliar. But the one thing that I learned throughout all of this is that emptiness is not a sign that something is wrong. Emptiness is the space. Healing means to work. It's like clearing a room before you design it. Your life has to empty out before it can truly be rebuilt. And most women run back to the old life that they are used to because they mistake emptiness for failure. But sis, it's not. It's not a failure. That is the rebirth that you are fighting against. So the loneliness that healing brings, that part right there, this is where a lot of women end up breaking down, and men too, right? But I speak directly to women because when you start healing, you end up losing people. And it's not because you're a bad person, it's not because they're a bad person, right? It's all about alignment. Who are the people that you are supposed to be in relationship with? Who are the people that are supposed to be in your aura during specific seasons and times in your life? Me personally, when I think about that and I put that together, it doesn't make me hate anybody, right? At one point, I did harbor a deep seated resentment, right? And I think that was like the unhealed version of me because when you start looking at things objectively from a standpoint of why did this person come into my life? What is it that they were supposed to be teaching me? When you truly come to terms with that question, right? And it sits down in your core, it would behoove you to have hatred for the very people that helped push you into the role that God intended you to live in. That would be the epitome of hating God itself. And it doesn't mean that you're better than these people. You end up losing people because they benefited from your wounded version. And I have stories for days for, instances like this where, I decided to pull back from people that I knew that were not in alignment with where it was that I was supposed to be going in the version of myself that God intended me to be, right? That's painful and it's uncomfortable on both sides. Your growth confronts their stagnation. Me personally, and I've experienced it within the last 3 to 4 months, right? Old people, they cycle back through expecting you to be the same person that they left, only to find out that you're not that, right? And it's triggering because it starts to make them look at themselves and, wonder like, hey, why is it that I am not where it is that I'm supposed to be? It just is what it is. It don't got nothing to do with you, right? But this is just clarity. Your healing exposes their lack of self awareness and they don't know how to love the regulated version of you, right? Because that takes time. It takes work and it takes patience. So, in order for them to get to know the healed version, the regulated version of you, the version of you that is no longer chasing for clarity, the version of you that is not begging for their attention, their love, their adoration, or asking them to do things, they don't know how to handle that. And that's okay. There was a time in my life where I felt like everybody around me was slipping away. That included friends, families, partners, even my own children at some moments. And I did truly feel abandoned. I felt rejected and unlovable. But what I didn't understand at the time was healing isolates you from the world that broke you. You cannot heal in the same environments that traumatized you, and you cannot regulate the proximity of chaos. You can't even evolve surrounded by people committed to staying the same. And I think that was one of my biggest issues at one point, right? I thought that because I had changed, I could still keep old people that, were a reminder of who I used to be around me, thinking that I could elevate them or, terraform them into, a higher level of being, right? A more healed version. But that's not necessarily true. And you end up breaking your own heart thinking like that. So, yes, healing is lonely, but it's not the loneliness of emptiness and it's not the loneliness of evolution. You're not alone. You are just above the frequency of people that you used to resonate with. And for that, I need you to allow that to land just a little bit. All right. So now I want to talk about your nervous system after trauma, the science behind why it is that you feel crazy. I want to bring something into science because I need you to truly, deeply, and fundamentally understand this. You are not traumatic. You're not overreacting. You're not too much, and you are not unstable. You are also not dysregulated. And dysregulation is not a personality flaw. Let us be very clear when it comes to that. Dysregulation is a nervous system injury. And I want to talk to you about what happens after trauma. Your amygdala becomes overactive. So basically, what that means is that you interpret everything as a threat. Your prefrontal cortex dims, meaning decision making, focus, and emotional control. That ends up getting harder. Your vagus nerve tightens, meaning that you ultimately end up living in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state. And your cortisol stays elevated. That is your stress chemical, right? Meaning that you are exhausted, but you can't rest. Your body stores trauma in the fascia, meaning emotions become physical symptoms. I'm going to give you an example. If you guys watched my last 3 episodes, I talk about this, how I dated someone when we broke up. It was extremely stressful and triggering, right? To the point where I saw a work truck and I thought that it was his, and I couldn't get myself back into my body, right? And so, because my mind felt like I was still fighting or trying to hold on to this person, that chemical, the cortisol dumped, and the physical response was me hyperventilating. It was my heart racing, right? Beyond control, to where I was trying to pay attention and control my breathing. It was just super dysregulated. And I thought that I was in the midst of dying, right? Because I couldn't get it back together. After that, right, I realized that I had new stress responses. So that looked like me shutting down emotionally. So, new people that I dealt with or were talking to, right? They either wouldn't get a chance because I was so triggered from that experience. They never had a fighting chance, right? I overthought everything, which would then cause me to shut down. I was easily triggered. I felt detached from my body. I felt confused with intuition. And ultimately, I kept attracting the same relationships. The truth of the matter is, you cannot let go of the pain that happened years ago. You feel unsafe even in safe environments. This is why my survival mode detox program is a body based program. So it's not just mental, it's not just mind or somatic healing, it's full body, because you cannot think your way out of trauma. You can't logic your way out of emotions, right? You have to be able to regulate it your way, right? And you have to be able to regulate your way out of these emotions. Mindset alone is not enough. Affirmations alone, they do help, but by themselves, they are not enough. Journaling alone, it is not enough. Your body has to be included in the healing. So when the body is ignored, the trauma always finds a way to speak through fatigue, through shutdown, through anxiety, through irritability, through fear, through procrastination, through self sabotage, through unhealthy relationships. Because in those unhealthy relationships, you are still in the process of trying to fight, right? And prove that you are worthy of love, adoration, and attention, all of the things that you give so easily, right? Your symptoms are not a flaw. They are evidence that your nervous system needs to be repaired. So, if this episode is landing for you, if something in your chest feels like it's opening, or in your mind, if your spirit is whispering, damn, like she's talking to me. This message is for me. Then I want you to do two things and two things only. Pause this episode right where you're at, breathe, and put your hands on your heart. Okay? When you're done with that, I want you to go over to my website, shakimb.store. Not because it's my business, because you deserve to heal with support. You deserve guidance that honors your trauma and your truths. Okay? And when you go over there, I want you to take my free audit. It is on the first page. And what that's going to do is it's going to measure your trauma and your stress response. That's going to be a good indication whether my survival mode detox program is a good fit for you. Okay. All right. So let's go deeper. Now I want to talk about why you keep sabotaging your own peace. And as a habitual peace sabotager, I will be the first to let you know this is a normal process. And I remember talking to friends before who, I felt extremely judged by at the time, right? While I was going through my rebuilding phase. And I remember I used to say like, I don't care what it looks like to outside world, to everybody else, right? I know that subconsciously, I know what I'm doing, even though I don't understand it. And the physical conscious state, I know that subconsciously, I'm doing what needs to be done in order to break certain cycles. Everybody doesn't have patience for that, and that's fine, right? So now I want to talk about the part that actually hurts the most because it's not the abuse, it's not the betrayal, nor is it the abandonment. It is the part where you actually betray yourself. Self sabotage, it's not about weakness. And it's not because you don't want better for yourself or that you don't care. Self sabotage is your nervous system trying to protect you from what is unfamiliar. For me, at one point, it was the unknown, right? All I have ever known is toxicity, chaos, right? And survival mode. So the concept or the idea of leaving that behind and trusting in God's plan that He has something more stable, more feasible, more reliable for me was scary as hell, right? And I'm going to probably make this another episode. So that's another reason to subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell. But I want to break this down in plain language. If chaos is familiar, peace feels unsafe. If hypervigilance is familiar, then rest feels like danger. If low self-worth is familiar, healthy love feels overwhelming. So what do we do? Like, what do we do in this? The answer is most of us end up sabotaging. We pull back from opportunities, right? We choose people who can't love us, who can't show up for us in the way that we need them to show up for us. We procrastinate on the things that would or could potentially change our lives. We minimalize our gifts, settle, shrink, and it's not because we don't want more. It's because our bodies are wired to avoid what it has never learned to tolerate. I have lived this through and through, by and by. There were seasons where I prayed for peace, but then when peace finally showed up, I ran from it. Ran from it because it didn't match my history. It didn't match my identity, or at least my perceived identity in that moment. It was too quiet. It was too still. It was way too unfamiliar. But the truth that most people do not know is that your body will reject the blessings you are not regulated enough to receive. Yeah, that's why they say, people, and I've seen it, externally in relationships, right? Where people will pray for a woman that, rubs backs and packs lunches and, is loving, loyal, honest, transparent, and just for them. And they've never had that before. And so they'll sabotage it. They'll ruin it, right? Before they allow you the chance to hurt them, they'll do it themselves. And it's not intentional. It's because of their nervous system, right? This is why my survival mode detox program exists. It's not to give you mindset shifts, but it's designed to expand your window of tolerance so you can finally hold on to good things without dropping them. So now I want to get into why you keep settling for less in relationships. And this is going to be a deep portion. I want to talk about the patterns that no one wants to admit out loud. Have you ever looked back at someone that you dated and thought to yourself, what the fuck was I doing? Because I have a few times, right? But the truth is you don't settle because you lack standards, right? Because at the time I had standards. I just didn't have boundaries and I didn't know how to enforce my boundaries. You end up settling because your nervous system is accustomed to emotional breadcrumbs. You're familiar with that, right? So anything obsolete is going to feel unsafe. It's going to raise your alert systems, right? Because it's new, it's unfamiliar. You don't know what the hell that is. Survival mode conditions you to mistake intensity for love, confuse inconsistency with passion, interpret manipulation as affection, overvalue bare minimum effort, ignore your needs in exchange for proximity, and accept emotional scraps because you deeply fear abandonment. So I want to put this very plainly, very clearly. You were taught to accept less because you were taught that you were less, or your experiences made you perceive that you were less. So when you grow up unprotected, unloved, unseen, or misunderstood, your body learns to survive without nourishment. So when a man gives you the smallest amount of attention, your brain lights up like a newly found feast. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, that's not a feast. It's starvation with seasoning. Yeah, I'm going to share something personal without going too deep or naming anyone. I dated someone in my life at one point who had charisma, softness, charm, and he knew exactly how to speak to my wounds. He knew how to make me feel special without actually giving anything sustainable. And my body literally ate that all up. No crumbs left behind because my wounds recognized his. My triggers recognized his patterns, and my history recognized his dysfunction. When I healed, though, that's when the problem kind of started to arise because I was actually able to see the truth very clearly. He wasn't a partner, he was simply a mirror, a reflection of me that was still learning to believe that she deserved more. This is why in the survival mode detox program, we focus on relationship regulation because healing your nervous system changes who you desire. Healing changes your taste buds, your attractions, your boundaries, the things that you tolerate. And it also changes what it is that you conceive or perceive as love. When your body becomes dysregulated, your heart finally stops craving who hurt you. Okay. The identity crisis that healing forces you into and nobody ever really talks about. So I want to shine a light on it because it's one of the hardest transitions during healing. When the woman you were in survival mode begins to die, you ultimately enter into an identity gap. You're not that broken girl anymore. You're not yet the healed version of yourself either. This is where you start to feel lost, confused, directionless, numb, unmotivated, disconnected, uninterested in old habits, unsure about your life purpose, emotionally flat, spiritually distant. And if no one has ever told you, this is completely normal because it's a part of the process. It's the cocoon phase. I want you guys to think about the butterfly analog. Everyone loves to talk about transformation, but no one talks about the stage where the caterpillar literally dissolves into a genetic soup. That's what healing does to you. It melts the old you. It dismantles the identity that you built on trauma. It deconstructs the persona you wore for protection, and it strips you of survival traits you thought were personality traits. And it's fucking uncomfortable. It's terrifying, it's disoriented, but it's damn right, downright it's necessary because before you grow wings, you have to lose everything that kept you crawling. Your identity isn't being destroyed, it's being rewritten. This is where you learn who you are without struggling, what you want without fear, what peace feels like, what your real voice sounds like, what your boundaries actually are, and what love should feel like. And lastly, it unveils what your purpose truly is. This identity rebirth is the foundation of my survivor mode detox program because we don't rebuild our identities, right? We sculpt them. And if you don't, you'll keep returning to the life that you've been trying to escape. I want to take a mid episode pause, reflect. This is our box breathing segment. So you're going to breathe in for 6, hold for 4, and breathe out for 6. While you're doing this, I want you to ask yourself, who am I becoming when I'm no longer the woman my trauma created? And now I want you to let that question sit with you. All right. So I'm going to end this episode here, and I'll be back with part 3. If this episode resonated, if it hit you in a place where you didn't even know existed, if it unlocked something in you, right? Or if it resonated, I need you guys to make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss part 3. Also, make sure you guys comment or leave me a review and share this video with another woman who is entering her rebirth stage, okay? Also, you guys can find me on all major platforms. You can be life coach, Truth, Trust, and Trajectory also has a Facebook page, so you guys can check that out. Make sure you follow and engage with my content. It helps me to create more content and create more products that are going to be beneficial to my audience. Until next time, make sure you guys go over here, take the free audit before I leave, join the waitlist for my survival mode detox program dropping at the beginning of next year. Until next time, okay, bye.
For a lot of us, potential does not pay attention to your prayers. It actually distracts
There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. Times the bravest thing you'll ever do is leave. Times
I
the
stopped
bravest thing
letting
you'll
them drain me. The truth, when you heal, the people who